it's stronger than money.
It will change your life. I'm gonna make wisdom go viral though while the other guys.
To the average person, they would think you're sick. Like in that, like.
I really did post like 6 videos a day for at least 3 years. I think I like really am a workaholic, but the obsession with the brand has taken it to another level.
Welcome to Green Beans Go. I'm your host, Claudio, and today we have an amazing guest today. She is Juliette. She has over 500,000 followers on social media. If you go to her TikTok account, she has 20 million likes. And you might be asking, hey, she's a real estate agent. Does it affect business? Well, she's going to tell you guys today how it's transformed her brand and how it can transform yours as well. Welcome to the show, Mari.
Thank you. I'm so stoked to be here.
Yeah. So you're a mom, right? You have 2 kids. You have over 500,000 followers on social media, and you have a real estate brokerage. How are you managing everything at once?
So in the beginning, I was like, this is going to be so much easier. I don't know why I thought it was going to be easy to open a brokerage.
Yeah.
I remember I was walking on the sidewalk and I just called the place. I was like, I just want to know how much it would be to like get my broker's license or whatever, how long it would take. And he's like, well, you're on the phone. You might as well just sign up for it. And in my head, I'm like, well, I already have the business from, going door to door, from social media. I already have agents who want to join. So this is going to be cake. And that's not how it went. And it was definitely a slower progression to get to the schedule I'm on now. But I'm definitely more on like a 9 to 5 schedule, whereas before it was 24/7 schedule. So that's really helped the most with being a mom and managing that. But it's not easy. Every day there's like something. I mean, I was going to bring my daughter here to do the podcast because I didn't have childcare. And then like I figured out with my husband. But it's every day it's like that. It's like figuring it out. Yeah.
When your kid is just looking at you, right? Like, so it's crazy because you have like this work life, right? You have your social media life where you have to like go on camera, you have to be in front of people, you have to go make money. But then you also have like your parent life where like a child just looks at you in those eyes and they don't know anything about your work life. And
at all
they know is like mom, or they know dad. Like that's something that I don't think a lot of people, everybody experiences it, right? Like if you're a dentist or if you are a contractor or if you're doing real estate, a lot of people have kids, but I don't think people really recognize like for the high performers out there, like somebody like yourself making content, somebody that's, running a business, like how hard it can be because as a business owner, right? Like when that kid looks in you in your eyes and all they know is you, right? Like you are their world. That's it can be a lot to deal with. How do you handle like a little bit of guilt? How does that feel?
What you said is really on point because almost every night I have those like times where I wake up in the middle of the night, like, when is this going to go under contract? What's going on with this agent? All those things that are just always on your mind. You don't clock out. Yeah. But even separating social media from being with my kids has been huge. I saw from putting my son on social media in the very beginning, I didn't know like the dangers of it. I was just like, I'm going to show my life. My son is a huge part of my life, obviously. So I would show our like day to day. And it wasn't until my husband kind of pointed it out to me and we kind of realized like as like brand deals started coming in and the following started to grow, it's like, this is exploitation of a child to have them do a brand deal. Like they don't, like you said, they don't know what social media is. They don't know what work is. They don't know that social media is work. Yeah. Because it is, especially if you're doing it consistently, like where I'm posting 5-6 videos a day, where I was doing that, having your kid in that is a full-time job for them, and they don't benefit off of it at all. The only negative thing that came from taking my son off of social media is people thinking that I'm not with him. They're like, where's your son? Like I would have clients calling me, how come you don't post your son in your content as much, blah, 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 or like new people calling me asking about him. That's not a normal relationship, right? Like to me, that should be totally separate. I don't need to be like bringing my child, like you're not bringing your child into the office every single day as in a normal job. Yeah. So you have to treat it that way. And even the connection that you have with your child, it's broken as soon as you bring that phone out. Even if you really want to capture like a photo or video just for yourself and your family, I've realized how much their face changes. Like they're having this amazing time with you. They're really connected, especially if you're super like focused on that quality time and being and not multitasking while you're with your kids. They pick up on it right away, and like their mood will instantly change. So once you really like pay attention to that, you realize how important it is to really set boundaries around that. It wasn't something that happened overnight. I just made it a priority to be like, I don't want a phone in between my child and I on a regular basis.
That's
you
powerful.
know, like, and it's been working. I don't know, like if you asked me 2-3 years ago if this schedule was going to be possible, like separating it that much, I would probably say it wouldn't be possible, but it really is a little bit every day. You just got to like remind yourself and take responsibility as a parent, you know, because that's their 0 to 6 is like their most formative years. And to kind of not take, I've learned to take it really seriously. Cause like I said, I was really like go with the flow, fly by the seat of my pants, whatever. But when it comes to kids, that's a human being they're responsible for. And like, it is on you. So, you know, I really encourage, I didn't know we were going to get into this, but I do really encourage parents, even if they are posting their kid currently, not to be so overcome with guilt that you've been doing that to not take them off. You know, like there's no time like the present to protect your kids from stuff online or making them work for content.
That's a good point, because a lot of times it is work.
It is.
It is, because you have to get them to smile, like, hey, smile, do it again, jump,
Yeah.
do that again.
It's 24 videos behind the one video or whatever, you know, like that's the reality that a lot of people aren't sharing. So I think just sharing a different perspective of like, yeah, he was in my content, but I realized like this is really messed up. Like, and every parent has the opportunity to do that.
You make a really fair point, and it kind of brings me to like kids who did Disney and Nickelodeon. A lot of those kids, like later on, really like they confess that they didn't enjoy that
because they don't know.
The girl from iCarly, Sam, like she wrote a whole book about it, how she felt as if she was like taken advantage of. A lot of those kids never got that money. Yeah, and they're upset about it, and a lot of them are resentful towards their parents. So it's pretty deep that you just, you know, like you make a good point, because if it's doing this with television, then social media is essentially like the same thing, because it takes a lot of time to do it.
Even worse, because I think in LA there's like a limit to how much you can have your child like of a certain age
probably like
on
a child
TV.
labor law, like 8 hours.
Right. In social
max.
media, it's like a free for all. So people could be working all day long. You know, you really don't know. So it is really important. There's more laws coming around about it, which is amazing. So I think that's just like has to be done. Kids have to be protected. So I think it's super important that people are now coming out about it, and they're like, listen, if you can't make the content interesting as an adult, maybe don't do it. Yeah. You know, like that's all I could say.
Yeah. So with that being said, you've made content interesting. You have over 500,000, you know, followers on social media, and you've done it, right? Like you've done it. It wasn't just because you put your kid on camera for a short period of time. You have shown people, you know, who you are, your stories. How have you done it? Because so many agents struggle. They, you know, for 2 reasons, right? Reason number 1 is they just don't know where to start. And when they start, they suck, because everybody sucks when they start. And then reason number 2 is perhaps they're working with people that are kind of constraining them to like those, you know, monotonous, repeated things that you'll see all over the country or all over the world. So how have you done it? How have you gained such a huge following?
I think just like with anything, what we were saying earlier, you have to always be thinking of the next thing. So when I started, you know, doing custom videos for all my listings, I really made sure I was consistent. I didn't like make one plan for one listing and another one for the next one and another. Like it was all like, we're doing this for every single listing. I'm going to have custom videos. I didn't have a huge budget to start with. So most of it went into videography and photography, just because I could see where social media could be like a really big asset for my clients. So it's always been with a purpose. So I'm growing my following, not just for myself, but so that I can benefit my clients and make those transactions easier, make them easier on the client, make them more fun. To be honest, it's super fun for me to make content. And when I'm on my way to an open house, or even coming here. It's like, I know what video I want to do. I get excited about it. I can like get pumped up in the car driving. I try to make every day as fun as possible. Everybody's going to work for most of their lives. So it's like, what can I do on the way to work that's going to be super fun? I'll get my cool coffee. I'll get like my playlist going.
Yeah.
I'll go make my content. I'm still working and I'm actually more effective that way because I'm getting like more stuff done.
Yeah.
Some people think that like multitasking is not the best way to do things because you want to focus on one task at a time. But at the same time, time is money. If you're going to be in a house for several hours for an inspection, why not, you know, make some content, keep that going, have a different background for whatever you're doing. I think the most demotivating thing for me is spending too much time at home where I'm not like out and about going to showings. Like, even though there are times where I'm like, oh, like I don't want to get ready, all that stuff. I don't want to get like whatever, get heels on.
Yeah.
But then that day always ends up being the best because you're like on point, you feel good, you're doing your job. Like that's always going to be the time that I feel the most productive. The consistency is key. Like I really did post like 6 videos a day for at least 3 years, like every single day.
Wow.
Where people look at that and they're like, oh my God, like that's a lot. They don't want to do that. There are things that sound crazy.
It does sound crazy.
Especially in real estate too. It goes hand in hand. Going door to door in South Florida for 6 hours at a time also sounds crazy because it's 100 degrees.
Yeah.
But I was like, I will do it. Like I will do anything to like get this business going. And what I tell agents is like, you can't bypass certain things just because you want to, you know. The people who are going consistently door to door every week will get the business. No matter what, they're going to see something from that. The person who goes once, probably not, you know. So it's like, if you are going to commit to something, fully commit and do it 120% every time.
Yeah.
I don't show up to a showing where I'm like, I don't feel like it today, and I'm sitting on my phone. You go look at the house. Like, if you're going to do it, do it.
Do it.
And do it 100%, 120% every time.
You know, what's really cool is, you know, I've heard stories that you did door knock. So I'm going to ask you a question, you know, regarding that as well. But what else is cool is a lot of times people think that it's just social media, right? Like, and of course, social media like gets you leads on autopilot. You have clients coming in all the time, but you also did, and perhaps even still do, in-person activity, right? And people don't see that, and we do it as well. So can you talk about that? Like, because most people think it's just social media. Can you tell us about what agents can do practically? And like you said, 6 hours. I mean, very few people will do that, and most people would say it's crazy. Like,
right?
They'd be like, "No, you're actually crazy. Like, tell me what I'm supposed to do. Like, is it 30 minutes?
Yeah.
It's a cold call. Like, tell me about something you've done that's crazy. Like just work ethic."
Okay, so a lot of the deals that I've done, it's like someone will call me and say, I need to see this house in 15 minutes. Now, there's a lot of agents that will say, no, I need to schedule it for like the next day, or I need to really have a plan in place. Like, they don't want to do stuff like that. But so many deals I've done, it's like, I'll come over in my pajamas. Like, I really don't care. I have sold a house in my pajamas before.
Yeah.
I was writing an email to the seller and I was like, I think we need to short sell this property. I've shown it a million times. I've done a bunch of open houses. Like, no one wants to pay the amount that you want for it because there were 2 mortgages on the property. And as I'm writing that email, I was in pajamas. It was like 7:30 at night. And I was like, fuck, like I'm going to like lose this listing. Then I get a call that second. Hey, we just saw your sign. We're outside. We want to see the property right now. And there's like no electric in the house. So I brought over a flashlight, still in my pajamas, because I'm like, you know, I don't want them to be waiting. And they ended up buying the house.
Oh my goodness.
So that's happened. Like, another time someone came to see one of my listings. It didn't work for them. And then they called me like 10 minutes after my open house. Oh, can we see this other house? Go and show it. Done deal. So stuff like that, where you really are like people want you to be available. And as crazy as it might sound for other people, like, clients want to feel like they are the number one, that you have all the time in the world for them. So even if you get a client from social media, you're still going to be meeting them in person. If I get a listing from social media, I'm still waking up every morning thinking, I gotta please my clients. Like, I gotta make sure that they're happy, especially if they see me on social media doing marketing for new business. Like, that is a huge thing that's always on my mind, where that's why I was so specific about who works for the brokerage. Because I'm like, if they're not doing a good job, like, let's say I get a lead and one of the agents doesn't call them, and then they see a video of me like, da, 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 like doing my stupid dance, they're going to be pissed. So it all has to meld together. And there is like such a sense of professionalism behind the scenes that is not at all on social media, because social media is super like, what converts is silly and goofy and, you know, weird for me. People even comment, oh, is it bad for your brand that you post like these like rap songs or like songs that aren't like professional or whatever? I'm like, this is what's fun. This is like, people want to see stuff that's exciting. I understand how it works. You go on Instagram, you're going to see a million videos of the same kind of thing, walking through the house, you know? And again, that's something that I was doing like 5-6 years ago. I know that's not what's going to convert now. I've got to like get creative. And that's the most fun thing for me, is the creativity. That's a lot of why I opened the brokerage too, is like, I have free reign to really post whatever I want within, you know, if it makes sense for the client and it's still like somewhat professional. But I think that being free to do that stuff with the branding has been huge. And when I interviewed at other brokerages, I felt like maybe I would be constrained to, you know, having to present myself a certain way to like be in line with that, to where this is like free, you know, which is nice. Did
you get hate before it? Like were brokerages like, it just doesn't fit for us? Like, did you ever get that? So in the very beginning, I used to always say, don't be sorry, call Mari. And I joined a brokerage that's pretty popular in like other states, not really here, but immediately they were like, that's so cheesy, that's so corny, don't say that at the end of your videos, like making fun of me for it. And I was like, I'm just gonna do it more. So I just do it all the time now. So I'm like, anytime I can, I'm like, don't be sorry, call Mari. And then people will comment about, like, say it, you know. Some people love it, some people think it's cheesy, some people love the dancing, some people are like, please stop making this dance. I'm like, I don't care. I'm never gonna meet these people really anyway. So if I'm working 24/7 like I do, and so often, like, social media has to be fun. I'm not gonna, if it was boring, I probably wouldn't do it. You know, I would probably just focus on the business and like have somebody else do my social media. But every time I've tried to have someone help me with social media, like posting for me or whatever, I'm like, no, like, you did it wrong.
I'm pretty like, I have to be in control with that kind of stuff. But yeah, if it wasn't fun, it really wouldn't work the same way as it does, I don't think. For
people to really wrap their heads around it, like 500,000 people, if you put a story out right now, a lot of people are going to see it, right? What is your real life like? Like when you go out to, let's say you go to Miami, or let's say you go to like Whole Foods, like, do people recognize you? Like, what is that like? And because you are, you know, at the end of the day, you're a realtor and you're a mom and you're like a real person. So what is it? Do people recognize you? Do they stop you? Do they ask for pictures? Like, what's it like?
Yeah, Steven gets kind of like, Steven's very shy, my husband. So yeah, people definitely stop us out. They've even stopped him alone. Like, he was at Target by himself and he's like, these people were saying that they know you. And, you know, so that happens pretty often now. And I think because I'm from South Florida too, it's kind of like a mixture of people I already know and then people from social media. So really wherever I go now, it's like, hey, it's from TikTok or like from high school or whatever. Which is really like a lot of realtors' goals, because you want, that's why people have bench ads. That's why people have billboards with their face on it. Like, they want people to recognize them. And there's something to be said for being like the local celebrity or whatever. Like, that's what I had in mind when I went into it. Not at this scale at all, but more so like locally. I was like, I just want people to know what I do for a living. And yeah, it's kind of crazy. Like it's something that I really dreamed about, like visualized a lot as a young child. I didn't realize what visualization was, but every night before bed, I would just like think about like what I wanted with my life, who I wanted to be. Like even my husband, it's like weird, and the house that we live in and all this stuff. It's like all stuff. I remember like visualizing like a big window in the front with like a dog, and it's all like very, very similar to like what my life is now.
Yeah.
Which is kind of crazy. So, yeah, I mean, in real life, it's very normal. Like we're very just like with our kids, like a normal life. And then I just go to work, and that's when I'm doing all the content and whatever. So the crossover in real life is not a ton. Like even with my husband, if he doesn't want to be in content, I'm not going to like exploit him for content either, you know? So I'm really aware of, as much as possible, I'm like, I don't want to shoot people who don't want to be in content. So it's like, if this is my thing, it's fully my thing, and I have to take responsibility for it. I have to put out what I need to put out, and then like go home to my family and just do normal stuff.
Live your life.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, well, it's really cool. I saw, I get this ad from Ryan Serhant, and he always says this, like it says, if 15,000 people in your market don't know you're an agent, like you have a problem.
Yeah.
And I don't really know anyone else besides you in South Florida. Like perhaps like Dina Goldenterre, but like there's nobody else that like at least 15,000 people know who they are.
Right.
And that sucks.
It's funny that you say 15,000, because my first postcard was like a little picture of my dog on the front, and I had 15,000 like Instagram followers at the time.
Yeah.
And I put that on the back of the postcard because I didn't have any sales. So I'm like, what can I like show that's going to benefit them?
Oh, nice.
So I was like, in this digital age, social media is so important. You need exposure. I can expose your house to over 15,000 followers. And then like every time I would do a postcard, it would just grow more and more. And I would just save like one from each group of postcards, so you can kind of see like, I really am like progressing, you know, because sometimes
so rewarding.
Yeah, I think no matter how many like followers you have or how well you do with social media, you're always going to have that, like, not always, but you're going to have that comparison in your head of like, okay, this person might be listing more, or this person might be posting. Like there's just so many different metrics to go off of.
Yeah.
And I've found success in like the real estate space, and a lot of that comes from also giving tips to realtors.
Yeah. So
it's kind of been a different approach. Instead of just showing like what I'm doing, like, I'm closing all these deals. It's like, how can I also help other people do the same thing? And that was one of the main things when I released my boot camp, which is a course that I do. One of the first things I say is like, if you're posting one time on Facebook on your status, hey, I got my real estate license, and expecting people to remember that, it's not going to happen. Like nobody's going to remember that one post. Think about if you wanted to like hire a landscaper, unless there's a landscaper literally on your feed all the time, like showing you, I'm mowing the lawn, I'm doing this, showing you what they're doing every day, you're going to forget.
They're so irrelevant.
It's like, and every time you scroll, you're going to find somebody else. So it is a business tool. And when I talk to other people who own businesses, they'll even talk about their signage in the front of their store. And they really get bogged down on details like that. I'm like, listen, no one's looking at the sign.
Yeah.
No one's looking at the sign at this point.
Yeah.
Go on social media. Like that's where people are. They have to see it there first, and then they will come to you in person. So when you're talking about the melding of like social media and in-person business, it really is. It's just getting their attention, but then everything else is done in person, pretty much.
Of course, yeah. And from there, like you are expected to sell their house like any other realtor.
Exactly.
Right? You're not just
like
you don't have like a celebrity privilege. You still have to like sell their house, show up on time.
Yeah.
You have to do your job.
Even above and beyond that, because most realtors, they get a listing and they put it on the MLS, and they're like, let's just see what happens. Or they'll do a couple open houses. I'm promising, like, instead of getting 2,500 Zillow views a month, you're going to get at least 1 million views on your listing. So that alone is a huge point where the sellers are like, okay, that makes sense. Like if I'm going to sell it for the price that I want, I need the most amount of people seeing it. And it's a metric that I can control. Where if the property's not selling, okay, I got to get in there and make more videos. Like instead of let's just wait and see.
A lot of people do that.
Yeah, a lot.
Just wait, and it probably makes it. At least me, like as a high, a high performer, somebody who's really like going after a lot.
Yeah.
I really hate to see like people who are being commissioned to do something, or perhaps paid, or just they're compensated to do something, not give it their all. It really irks me.
And I think if something doesn't work out, but you have given it your all, it's a totally different feeling. I never want to be in a situation where I'm like, oh, I didn't sell this property because I didn't do enough. It's like, did I exhaust every single option? And I tell that to the agents too. Like when you're in a pickle, exhaust every option until you need to go like another route. But that is our job, is to make sure that it sells on time and for the right price. So if you're not exhausting everything at your fingertips and like doing everything you can to sell it, someone else will. Or you might just not have the pride of work that you need to stay in the business too.
Yeah.
Because if you're like shooting blanks, it can really get to your head. And at the end of the day, I think the most successful agents that I see from like a management perspective, now that I'm in the broker position, the agents who take responsibility, and they're like, listen, like this deal fell through. I did this, and this, but maybe I messed up on this one piece. Those are the people that are going to do really well, because if you can do that with every single deal, even the ones that fall through, you're going to learn and you're going to make more deals because of that. If you go into it like, it's their problem, they didn't do this, like I did everything, and that's never like a winning mindset in my opinion. It's a losing mindset. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
Well, you've done some really cool stuff. You have, you have a brokerage, you have a following, but can you take me back to a time like, in the beginning? So perhaps you have some momentum, maybe you're like getting some commissions, like, oh wow, like this is great. But then, of course, you have to like reinvest back in your business. Can you take me back to a time where you are very successful to the world, but had maybe like less than $1,000 in your bank account? Because I feel like everyone who's really making it happen has had that happen.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I had a student credit card that really screwed me up, like screwed up my credit. I took out like a cash advance on like 25% interest, like not knowing.
25%?
Yeah.
Interest.
And when I went to the bank, they were like, this is really great for your credit to have a credit card, da da da. And I didn't know anything about like, everyone can educate themselves, but unless you're super on top of it and very responsible, it's very easy to get in those scenarios where you're paying money that you don't have. So when I got into real estate, I had just put first, last, and security down on an apartment in Las Olas. And so I was like, unexpectedly had just spent all this money on like furniture, food, all this, like everything to get the place ready. And then I'm like, oh my God, I don't have a job anymore when I was in med sales. So that experience, like messing up my credit, having to pivot from one job to the other where I had a steady salary plus commission to 100% commission was probably the best thing for me because I had to learn how to manage my money. Like I was like, this is serious. I have bills to pay now. Like I can't mess around. And that's when I really changed my day-to-day life more, like to where I was really focused on hanging out with my friends all the time, going out, downtown a lot, all of that. All the time. And then I like literally just made a shift and I was like, I got to get serious. I got to get my money in order. I had so much stress around money all the time. Because, I saw my parents go through like the 2008 crisis and both of them, they're divorced. So both of them handled it totally differently. And I just saw it's real. Like my dad had to move back into his duplex, which was like an investment property for him. Wow. We lived in one side of that for like a while, and I kind of saw how much that hurt him mentally, and so it just taught me a lot about not living above your means. And I am very specific about like what I spend my money on and what will make sense, but especially in real estate, there are so many opportunities to blow your money, and people will be in your inbox every day. Yeah. Oh, you need to be paying $500 a month for this magazine. Oh, you got to pay $1,000 a month for Zillow leads. Oh, you need to blah, blah, blah. Videography and photography is expensive. If you don't sell a listing, you're still spending all that money, you know? So that is also what I teach the agents. I'm like, let's figure out what actually converts, what makes money, and not do all the other shit. So I tell them, like, don't waste your time and your money on these marketing things that I've already tried and don't work.
Yeah.
Do this that does work, aka social media, which is just sweat equity, basically, because it's just your time.
Yeah.
But again, like, if you don't take it seriously as a job, it's not going to convert. So people have to figure out, like, what is worth me putting in the time or the money, and anticipating not closing deals. So I never calculate the commission until the ink is dry at closing table. Like, even if it's a 4-month long, like, under contract process, I am not going to look at what I'm going to make, because it's not my money yet. Like, it's not, doesn't belong to me until it's in my hands. So I think that's a mindset too that is healthy in real estate, is kind of, especially in the beginning, being as, like, even keeled as possible when it comes to either not making a deal happen or making a huge deal happen. Because just because you get a $25K check at once doesn't mean you're going to get that next month or even the following month. I think manifestation is huge, and, like, being kind of delusional about how, like, I would write down these, like, crazy numbers and would hit them every year, but I don't then invest all of my money back into the business. And I've heard, I was listening to, like, Mr. Beast talking about how much he spends on his videos and how he reinvests, like, all of that capital into the production and how great that is. And I'm like, no. Like, I would never, I value my peace of mind and, like, having things in savings, seeing that account grow, investing money, like, diversifying my portfolio, all of that is so much more exciting to me than, like, blowing money because I can, you know? And yeah, it's like, it sounds like the more boring approach for sure, but I definitely had that, like, super extreme anxiety, just feeling like, until I hit, like, 50K in savings, I literally would wake up and I'm like, I could be poor today. Like, I could just lose everything tomorrow so easily. And, like, really just, I'm not advising anyone to live that way, because it's, like, a lot of anxiety around it, but that has kept me so aware of the expenses as the business has grown. You know, we brought in, like, at least, like, 1.7 million in commissions last year. And I still am, like, a psycho about making sure that the expenses of the brokerage are not out of hand, especially hiring people. Like, people you'll hear on TikTok and on social media all the time, delegate everything. That's what a CEO does. That's what a business owner does. I completely disagree with that, because number one, I've learned so much in doing things myself. Like, I know every part of my business. I know how to do everything. So if an employee was sick or had to quit randomly or something like that, I can pick up those pieces. Whereas if I'm delegating literally everything, I'm going to be like a fish out of water, not knowing what to do. And you can get out of hand just paying people salaries, and then you're like, oh, that huge amount that I made last year, maybe that's not happening this year or the next. And then you're kind of, like, in a sticky situation. So I think just less is more, and figuring out how to expand your reach and expand your marketing reach without paying a ton of money, and not falling for the people in your inbox saying that you need this, that, and the other thing, or their services or whatever. I mean, there's some things that you need, but keeping it simple and consistent, I think, is the key. Because literally every month you could be like, okay, now I'm going to spend $1,000 a month on this thing or that thing. And then it just gets crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, as a realtor, it can add up, especially in you can, of course, as a realtor, you can make a lot of money, but if you're spending all your money, there's that. But But then there's also like the devil's advocate is with Mr. Beast, right? His company, right? You know, Mr. Beast, right, was offered $1 billion and he rejected it. So what would your thoughts be on that?
That's crazy.
Like actually offered $1 billion.
Offered $1 billion for his whole company.
For all the channels.
For all the channels. That's crazy. Well, I think about it, and I think about like with my kids, like Blippi, he has like killed it because he has Blippi, and then he has like people who impersonate him, who do the content as him, and then cartoons and like all this stuff. So I understand, no matter how much the money is, like not wanting to get rid of your brand, because I've had a lot of people not obviously offer me $1 billion, but I've had a lot of brokerages come and say, oh, we want to like make your office this office, or like, you know, here's this much money to acquire your team, whatever. And it's the pride of having your own brand, and like not even just the pride, but knowing how much you can work off of that. Like it could be real estate now, but it could be, you know, I have my podcast, I have like, you know, the social media aspect. It could be an investment fund down the line. You know, you just never know. And as I grow my network and my connections, I'm more and more like, this brand is something I should hold on to and not give it up for like a quick money grab, and so then you're under the control of somebody else. Or
a different brand. There was a company I applied for to work, to do real estate video, and they didn't call me back. And I was like, I'll work for you, not compete. Like, I'll wear your t-shirt.
Right.
And that company, later, I actually was trying to sell me the business. They're trying to sell me their business to own it. They're like, hey, we could do $2 million in profit. You'll have it. Here's the cost. Cash flow, like, can't get too into it. But they were trying to sell it to me. And I was like, but my brand is valuable.
Right.
Like, I believe in my brand. $2 million sounds good, but I believe we can do more than $2 million.
Right.
Give it a little bit of time, right? I believe we can really do a lot more than that. So the value of a brand is something that very few people understand. Like, for example, like, let's say you work at Compass, or let's say you work at Keller Williams, or you work at Doug Elliman. These are all, different brands, and some brands maybe really align with you. But what's different is having like your own brand, or like Compass isn't really your own brand,
right?
Because if Doug Elliman offers you, $2 million, you might take it, So with that being said, like, what do you think the value of a brand is, and try to educate somebody who's like unaware,
right?
Like somebody who's like kicking it, like, well, yeah, I understand, but I could build this, my mom, did this, and she built it over 15 years and she's a millionaire now, right? So like, what would you say the value of a brand is? Because I believe you can turn a decade into a couple of years with a brand.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But educate somebody who's like resistant on it.
I think if you're resistant to starting your own brand, the biggest benefit of it is that it's your brand to play with. So it's yours. You make the decisions. Now that could be a good or bad thing for people. Some people are like, I don't want to make the decisions. But when you're forced to, when it's your own brand, you grow so quickly. Like your knowledge. When I opened the brokerage, I cannot tell you how much I learned in the first year just because I had to.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, this is my name. So when it's your name, like everything you do is tied to that, and you have that awareness where you're like, okay, this is going to be perceived this way. This is, I want this brand to benefit people in this certain way and not go outside of that. I think the beauty of having your own brand is not only like you creating the name and the creativity behind it, but also setting the parameters of your brand for your values. So what am I not going to do? Like, what's my hard no?
Yeah.
What's my yes, let's go super forward with this? Even if somebody else has an opinion on it, of course you can listen to different opinions, but at the end of the day, you are fully responsible. If you make a decision based on somebody else's opinion and then it doesn't turn out the way that you want it to turn out, you're still responsible. So I think that's been the biggest lesson is like, no matter what I learn or unlearn, what I decide with this brand is going to change the trajectory of it for good or bad. So it's a constant kind of baby that you're making sure that you're protecting it, but you also want it to flourish. And everything you do day to day. It's like, you're going to be way more passionate about your own brand than you are going to be about, you know, a Compass or Douglas Elliman, whatever. You might be super proud to work there. But what I've kind of seen is that a lot of brokerages, and excuse me, that was the experience for me, was they're kind of making it seem like you have your own business, but you don't. So identify, like, what are the benefits behind actually having your own brokerage or having somebody else take on the liability for you. That's a big piece of it too. The liability aspect is huge with real estate because a lot of things can go wrong in like a financial transaction. But having a brand, regardless, if you're going to do like freelance work, I think freelance work is going to skyrocket. I think it already has, but entrepreneurship has grown to almost 30% in the last 3 years. And for people to stick with that and really like not get swayed either way, I think being like obsessed with your brand and married to your brand and having that be the deciding factor of like, I'm not going to waver from what I'm doing can be it's stronger than money. You know, it's way stronger than money. It's like, at the end of the day, no matter what happens, I still have this brand that I created. And another thing is a lot of these big brands are owned by multiple people. So you have to think too, do I want to go into this as a partnership? Do I want to go into this alone? Am I always going to be 100% owner? I've never opened my business like with the thoughts of it being acquired, but I am 100% owner. So I have all of the ability to like make whatever decision I want, which is huge. If I had like other investors involved, and even though they might be able to bring capital to the situation, maybe like make it a franchise, I have the traffic to where I could go crazy, you know, and be like, let's have branches everywhere and people ask for it. But even when I branched outside of South Florida to like Orlando and Tampa, I'm like, what can I personally handle where the customer service is going to be amazing and the standards are going to be high and they're going to stick that way, and I'm not going to change the standards because I want to grow. It's like, again, like slow and steady, now I've realized does win the race, because if you're trying to speed by, like me trying to speed by all these huge brokerages or whatever, I could lose my own values in the process of that or go aside from what I originally promised myself with the brand. So that's why I think like vision boards are so huge, because it's literally drawing it out and like making it just easier to understand your actual brand. You could literally build your brand on a sheet of paper or on a vision board. And when I don't do that, I feel scrambled. Like I'm like, where's my direction? You know, so having it on there and saying, okay, this is the primary focus, maybe not just monetary, but like, who am I going to influence with this brand? How is this going to grow and help them? That's the biggest thing too, because as a brokerage, even though everyone kind of comes to me to apply, I don't do outside recruiting. I still have to retain those agents. Like there has to be a reason for them to stay that's outside of me. So that's been another thing. It's like, okay, what outside of the social media exposure that I can give to the agents, what are the other reasons for them to stick with me? So there's so much behind the scenes of like the support aspect, how much support they're getting. Are they getting leads? Are they able to handle and convert those leads? Like there's just a lot of moving parts kind of behind the scenes, but the brand is definitely what keeps me with it for sure.
It's so powerful, and it's motivating. And what you said that I really liked is you said it's more powerful than money. Right? Like the brand is like, that's why I was like, 2 million, I'm good. Like I have a brand, like I have something I'm building. Right. And I'm sure you've been offered, even the huge offers to buy your brand or to acquire your brand or be part of it, but it's stronger than money. And when you believe in it, like, it's almost like, it'll make you a lot of money, but it's not even about the money, because you wake up and you use the word obsessed, right? And very few people are obsessed. I'm sure that like when you think of, your brand's name, like the word obsession would be appropriate, because it really takes a level of obsession to build something. And it almost like, to the average person, they would think you're sick. You're like, you are sick, like in that, like,
like in the middle of the night, like,
this is how we're going to do it. Exactly. Right. So like to the average person, the level of obsession, and I think that's really important. I don't think a brand can be built without obsession. Like your brand was built upon obsession. I believe somebody like Sirhan, like his brand has been built upon obsession,
right,
of his name, of his brand, of his passion. Big brands, social media, like it has to take obsession. Can you talk about the obsession? Like, what does that look like? And because to the average person, it's really not for them, but for the 1%, the people who really want to go huge. And then again, it goes deeper than money. It's stronger than money. It's more powerful. Like, what is the level of obsession that you have with branding?
Okay, so being obsessed with your brand, I think, is vital for the growth and staying with it. As much as I try to turn my brain off, every single day, I'm like, what can we do to make the brand better? What can we do to increase profits, of course, because every year I want to be doubling business. I think just everything about it, like making a Canva post, like talking about things that you can outsource.
Yeah.
There are a lot of things that I don't want to because I like doing it. Like I like making the brand look a certain way, and the color scheme is not like what a brand is. It's like there's so many different parts of telling the story. So I think the obsession for me is key. I wouldn't be pushing myself so much every single day if I were working for somebody else.
That's true.
Yeah. And I also have a huge problem with authority. Since high school or like middle school, I've just have never been one to like listen to teachers or follow the rules. My mom was just always like, you're really bad with authority. This is an issue,
Yeah.
But I think I just always knew, like, I'm not good at taking direction from other people. I'm not good at like staying in the lines. And I always want to do more. Even when I worked in retail, I wasn't making commissions. I was making like $8 an hour at a surf shop. But I was like, I want to sell the most sunglasses today. I want to sell the paddle boards. Like I want to sell the big ticket items just because I was bored. And I think having like a mind like that where you're constantly waking up, like what more can I do? There's nothing better than having your own brand because you literally have free reign to do whatever you want. You also do have to be your own PR person though when it comes to having a brand and then tying it to social media. There's no one telling you don't post that. There's no one telling you that's not appropriate, So in a good and bad way, you do have to be your own like filter and be like, this is a fun video, but is this aligning with the brand message and like what we're really trying to do? I don't honestly do that much because like as you can see from my content, it's kind of all over the place. But the obsession that I have just with, I think I like really am a workaholic. So the obsession with the brand has taken it to another level where I was like busting my ass at any job that I was doing, trying to be the best, trying to be the top sales rep, whatever. But now that I have a brand, it's like the sky is the limit. And when I'm talking about visualization, it's like my biggest issue is visualizing right now is what is like the sky is the limit. So like what is the end goal? Yeah. Like, I don't really think of things that far in advance. It's like, if it's really fun and great for right now, like I'm just going to keep it going and like keep innovating and trying to make it more and more interesting for people to follow along on that journey. That too, like the obsession of showing people the behind the scenes. I really have seen so many people get their licenses in the last few years because of watching stuff on TV, and they see this like really glamorized view of it. And I'm kind of obsessed with showing people the other side of that, of like, okay, it's not like that day to day, like deals fall through all the time. That is a huge piece too. In real estate, if you're not obsessed with it, those deals falling through will kick you out of the game so quickly, and it happens all the time. That's why like 90% of agents don't make it past the first year. That's why I started my courses, because I'm like, it's a mindset thing. It's not I don't have enough training, I don't have enough knowledge. It's your mindset that's the problem, and that's why you're not staying with it, so because even the other day, like I had been working on, and it's kind of hard to talk about because as a professional, you are trying to show yourself as like the best all the time. Yeah. But
go ahead and share it.
In balancing, you know, like having my child and then listing properties right away, right after that, it's been difficult to do it myself. I've pretty much referred all the business out to my agents now, where I work like 50-50 with them. But I was doing like my last listing that I was like, this is the last listing I'm going to do by myself, and showing it constantly for 6 months, like nonstop, doing videos nonstop, taking time away from, you know, my daughter. And then it ended up just not selling because of price issues. I had gotten offers and whatever. And I'm telling you, the gut punch that feels like, it's not any better than it is when you first start out.
Yeah.
You know, like when you first start out, it's more of a panic because you're like, where's my money coming from? Like, I really am counting on these deals to close, but that's why you don't count the money before it closes. Ink is dry. Because if you know, like, oh my God, I could have just made 75 grand and I didn't, it's like, how am I going to recoup that loss? Whereas if you don't even know how much you're going to make, or like you haven't really thought about it that much, it's like, just keep it moving. Like, just keep it moving on other deals. Everyone, I don't care how many deals you've done in your life or whether people will admit it or not, everyone goes through that shit. Everyone goes through listing properties that don't sell, or working with buyers for 6 to 8 months and they don't buy anything. Again, when I didn't have kids, it wasn't a big deal. Like, it was more like, oh, whatever, like I can just keep going. When you do, you look back and you're like, I am the only person responsible for that time. So I chose to like work with that time. It didn't come to fruition the way that I thought. And you kind of mourn those times. Like, I really do. Like, I'll mourn the times that I'm like, that Saturday and Sunday I spent working when I could have been like chilling with my family. So it's hard now not to get in that kind of almost like a resentful mindset where I'm like, what, or like rack my brain around like what I could have done better or what I could have done right that I didn't do. There's a fine line in those situations between learning from it and taking some responsibility and just like letting it go and being like, it just didn't work out. And I gave it my all. That's the one thing. When I think the biggest, like the person that gives me incredible advice is not only my husband, because he really like keeps me logical about the situation. He's like, listen, like, you've been crushing it, you kill it. This is like not a big deal. But my mom especially is very good about like, if something goes wrong like that, you have 10 minutes to be upset and then you need to get over it and like move on with your life. And that has absolutely helped my career. Like unbelievably.
Like that idea.
The simplicity of get over it.
10 minutes. Yeah.
Honestly, like, just, it's work. It's not the end of the world. In 10 years, this is not going to affect me, you know, mentally. Stuff with your family or stuff like that, that's like where I feel like my energy is more towards, I guess. But just honestly, just my mom being tough on me and being like, you can't sit in your shit. Like, you can't sit and be stuck, you know, just because this negative thing has happened. And she's also said, like, as my listing was expiring, I'm calling her. I'm like, Mom, what do I do? She's like, you fight for the listing. Like, you fight for it. You do everything that you can to sell it. And like, at the end of the day, if that doesn't work, at least you did everything that you could to get it done. That gives you so much confidence, because going into anything else, regardless of whether this one sold or that, like, I still have a good track record and I can still go to a seller and say, I will 100% exhaust every option to sell your property. I'll exhaust every option to find you what you're looking for. That's just the standard that I have. And that's what I expect out of the agents too. So I can't expect them to do things that I'm not doing myself. So when they come to me and they're really like heartbroken about a listing, or, you know, the seller's not understanding me or whatever, I have to be kind of how my mom was to me and be like, listen, what could you have done differently in the situation? It's not all your fault, but like, let's try to find one lesson out of this, and then we need to move on. And that's kind of how that's kind of the standard of like of the brokerage. I just don't think mulling over things and like complaining about clients, you know, especially in a brokerage setting, like among the agents.
Yeah. It's not healthy.
It's not healthy. And it can be a never ending conversation of, oh, you find like a work buddy that you're just going to like vent to every single day about your issues. That's a habit. You know, you got to just like say it is what it is and move forward, and then you'll be happier for it. I really do believe that. I don't think like babying yourself in this industry is helpful, to be honest.
Yeah, people see, right, they see the G-Wagon, they see the big houses, they see the followers, but what people don't see is the non-glamorous side. You know, we were shooting the Hamptons, and we were just super passionate, so we were like, go and shoot. You know, we had an Airbnb, and we would just like edit, and then in New York, things close at like 9:00, you know? So the first night out, we went out to get food, right? We saw a bar was open till 11, like a fancy bar. Like, oh, perfect, we can get oysters, right? And then we go there and like, oh yeah, it's just drinks. The kitchen closed at 9, and it's like 11:00 pretty much. And then, so we went to 7-Eleven, and we had to just make food from 7-Eleven. Yeah. It was disgusting, but it was like, hey, we can handle it. And like, that's like, there's parts of real estate, parts of what we do in media that they don't see. So like, can you just like tell people how is it like on the back end of things? Because people see the nice stuff. They see the G-Wagon. They see the TikToks and you're drinking Starbucks. Right. Like, what is it really like?
Well,
like,
that's
what's
the
that
thing
grind
too.
Look like?
I am obsessed with cars. So the car is like my home. Yeah. It's like my second home. I'm working out of the car all the time. I drive constantly. So for me, I can justify like, I want to have a nice car. Yeah. Pretty much everything else, like I rewear clothes all the time. I try not to like over consume with that kind of stuff and just spend like frivolously on things I don't need. Yeah. My husband will even say too, he's like, what do you even spend money on? I'm like, I don't even know. I think I get like spa stuff, like facials when I can, stuff that's like self-care. But I think for me, experiences are like the most important. So like day to day, having good experiences that can be free or, you know, whatever. But as far as like the reality of things, being resourceful is huge. Not having every tool with you when you're trying to get the job done is okay. Yeah. You know, the reason why I have matte business cards is so I can write on the back of it if I need to and like leave it at someone's door. Having paper in the car that you can just like rip off a piece of paper. If you are so bogged down by the details that you're like, I need to have the most perfect laid out like letter for this person to communicate with them, the opportunity is gone. Yeah. So I think behind the scenes, it's a lot of just being like scrappy with everything. Like I am just kind of like I try to be as prepared as possible, but when you have a full schedule, it's like, how can I show up the best, you know, as a person and not need all of these different things at my disposal, like as a crutch almost. Yeah. I think, just focusing on yourself as much as possible, like being healthy, being in a good mindset, being able to be present with people when you are like on work mode, and just expecting that of yourself. But as far as like the reality day to day, for me now with the brokerage, it's less exciting than it was when I was an agent, because as an agent, like you're in and out of houses all day. You can like take content, like it's like you're out of the house, you know. With the brokerage, it's a lot of like admin work in the office. So I just get my admin work done and then I'm out of there. Like I'm not trying to be in the office. I don't think deals get done in the office very often. It's more so out and about. So I like to like drive around, look at what like, oh, I saw it for sale by owner. Let me call a client. Let me call an agent, tell them to go after it. Like that's where I'm like in my zone, is in the car, just like just finding random deals. Or I'll find a random house. I'm like, oh, that would be perfect for this client. Kind of making deals out of nowhere. Like the property that's been sitting there for 2 years and no one wants to touch. Who can I find that will renovate that? And like kind of getting excited about the product that they can make out of it. Yeah. That to me personally is more exciting than selling somebody like a primary residence that's already done. I think a lot of people gravitate towards real estate for that reason, to show the like really luxury homes. And there's a huge market for that. And we help people relocate all the time. But I love finding like a really shitty property and then talking to the client about like what they're going to do, seeing it through that process, visiting the site, everything, and then seeing it when it's done, when it's ready to sell. That's like, to me, the most fun for sure. Because I grew up, my parents flipped houses my entire life. So my mom would like buy a house based on the tree in the yard and be like, trust me, it's going to look good at the end. And I was like, this place is a hellhole. But it's kind of amazing how people transform things. And I like seeing that process for sure.
Yeah. Are you a competitive person?
Extremely. Yeah. In everything, I feel like. I just feel like I'm naturally super competitive. Yeah. And I enjoy it. Like, I remember we used to get these emails every day in med sales of like, who's the ranking person, like who's the top salesperson. I couldn't wait to see it because I'd be like, ah. It's almost like, I was explaining this to my husband the other day. He's like, how do you work at a coffee shop when it's so distracting? Because he's a lawyer. He's very like, his office is so quiet. It's like very low key.
Classical music.
Yeah, exactly. Like no music. And I'm like, how are you guys working? But I told him, I'm like, working at a coffee shop next to someone who's like also in real estate or whatever, to me, it's like running next to somebody on a treadmill. It's like, ooh, like now I know, like I'm getting like just the vibe of like, there is competition out there. Because when you're working from home a lot, you can think that it isn't out there, that everybody's kind of doing that.
You're at the top.
Exactly. You need like giving yourself that little like reality check is super important, because you're like, oh damn, like there's, even in a low market, there's all these deals being done. How come I'm not doing them? Or if I drive through my neighborhood and I see other people's like signs up, I'm like, like, why didn't I market more to get those listings? Or like, you know, my dream is like all of the like signs in South Florida be pink. Yeah. Like that's what I try to tell the agents. I'm like, let's get all these signs pink. Like, you know, because there's so much opportunity out there. And if you have the mindset of there's not enough for me, you're always going to lose. And I try to tell people too, like, just be realistic. If you think that you're going to be a top producer by sitting at home, you're absolutely wrong. Like, you have to be in the field. You have to be competing. You have to be competitive. Like, there are people in this industry that are extremely competitive that either come from sports or they're just naturally like that. You can be a mellow person and do very well in this industry for sure. And that attracts like certain clientele. But the vast majority of people want you to be aggressive, and they want you to be like a negotiator and someone who's on point and like ready to work at the drop of a hat. I think if you're not competitive, it would be really hard to be in it for a long time, for sure.
You have to be competitive
to deal with the bullshit.
Because there's winners in this market.
Oh yeah.
There's people who are so like smart, on the ball, on point. So when you go to this, you know, let's say you go to the cafe, there's a lot of realtors out there. What is it like? Like, do you just feel like I just need to move faster?
Yeah, it gives me, I don't know, it gives me like a push.
Little
where
rush.
I'm just like, I get like a rush. I'm like,
oh, interesting.
There's like more opportunity for me to grow.
Yeah.
That's where I feel. Because I think the moment you get stagnant, you can get depressed. You can get like, I don't know, it's just the worst. I think a body in motion stays in motion. I learned that in college and I never forgot it, because I went from being really like not having my shit together to turning that kind of on a dime. And the most effective thing was just putting more on my plate, to be honest.
Yeah, Grant Cardone says the white space in your calendar is a devil.
It is. Yeah. The more time you have to think about random stuff, especially if you're scrolling through social media, like I can remember even in college, like I had a concussion in college and I had to move home and I had to drop out of school. And I was just like at home, like scrolling through Facebook. And that's when Facebook was super popular, seeing all my friends like post about what they were doing on the weekends. I got so depressed, like wouldn't even leave my house at that point. And now when I'm ever in that mode, like when I was postpartum and having to spend more time at home and starting to scroll more, I'm like, this is so bad for your brain.
Yeah.
Because it gives you that FOMO. Like I went through such a big chunk of my life where I was like, I don't have FOMO anymore. Like I'm doing so much that I don't have even time to scroll. Now that I do have more time, or when I did, like it's the worst for your brain. Honestly, I think it's like, it can make you feel like you're doing stuff when you're not. You're like, oh, I just spent 2 hours like looking at other people's lives instead of living my own, you know, or instead of like sitting. There's something to be said about just sitting with like a notebook to figure out your business plan, or to like recalibrate it, or, you know,
it's so
multiple
virtuous,
times in the year.
Yeah. And it is very hard to do because your like brains are like addicted to crack.
It is an addiction for sure. For sure. It's like an addiction to something that's not real.
Yeah.
So then I think, like appreciating little things, like I said, like little trips to get coffee, like little like things that are day to day. And you can be like, I'm so grateful that I get to do this every day. Like, I'm so grateful that I get to come to this house and like do a podcast and promote the listing that's now under contract already.
Yes.
But pointing out those things that you are really grateful for. If you're not visibly looking at it, like I try to, if I'm in that space where I feel personally like I'm not growing, or personally like maybe I'm not hitting the mark as much, I can then look at like the production that my team is doing. I'm like, wow, they're crushing it. Like that's something to be stoked about and grateful for, instead of always in the constant state of pursuit. You know, that's another thing. Like, it's great to be competitive, but you get to a point where you're like, what's the purpose of this? Outside of making money, you know, like you've got to feel good day to day with what you're doing. And is this benefiting other people? Like, what's the main goal of all of this? Right. So always like getting back to that. It's going to change. It changes for me throughout the year all the time. So I always just go back to like my notebook, and I'm like, if I feel confused or doubtful, I just start writing in it, and then it like brings a lot of clarity for me. Yeah.
So you put a lot of your life out there. People see it. You know, you've shared your story. What's something that you haven't told people? What is something that people don't know about you?
I'm so open that it's hard for me to even think of something that I haven't shared. Like, even with my real estate career, I don't keep anything back at all. Like, I'm just like, this is what I'm doing, and this is how I'm getting business, and this is this. And so many people have told me not to do that, but I can't really help it. I'm just like, I like to share, but I'm trying to think of something that I really have not shared. Oh, I have something that's funny. That's actually involves you guys. So when you guys did a listing shoot for me, and I brought the baby to the house. Yeah. Like, I felt so disgusting and sweaty that day, because I was like holding the baby outside. It was like 100 degrees. I remember she was crying and she wouldn't let me give her to anybody.
I remember that.
And like, you know, for shoots like that, like I think everyone thinks that you're so like put together before that or whatever. And I remember like throwing my hair up because I was so sweaty, and I had like a sweat mustache, and I was holding the baby, and I'm like, fuck, like, is she going to go to sleep? How am I going to do this? Blah, blah, blah. I honestly thought, I was like, am I going to have to carry her through the video, whatever. And then it ended up being great. And a lot of the comments were, I love your hair. Your hair looks so cute like that. How did you do it? I'm like, I was sweating my ass off right before taking this, and that's why. Yeah. And that's not anything like a crazy story, but it's more so an example of
reality.
You're not always prepared. You're not always going to be like in that like headspace and like stoked and feeling your best, but like just getting it done. Like, honestly, I think that's 90% of it. I think a lot of people, like, maybe you say no to things, or you like cancel things if you're not in the exact like outfit you want to be in, or the exact mind frame you want to be in. Like, nobody is going into things like, I have it 120% figured out. Like, you got to just kind of keep with it and keep with your plan. Yeah. And keep the promises to yourself that it's like, this is what I was going to do. Now I'm going to execute, and just keep it pushing. And people really don't realize things that people don't realize your insecurities. Like, that was a big thing for me in sales. Was I was so insecure, and so like I would just sit and like I didn't want to talk to the doctors. I would actually like pray that the doctors didn't let me in so that I wouldn't have to like come up with what to say.
Oh no.
Because I was so awkward. I mean, in high school, people would always say you're like the most awkward person. And once I got like more familiar with that process of like wanting to get that business, it helped. But it took years for me to not feel super insecure and feel like, oh my God, somebody's like looking at my left eyebrow. No one cares. Literally, no one cares. And that's the most freeing thing is that whatever situation you're going into, I just try to think this person is thinking about like, okay, think about an investor. I was so intimidated by that term. And I would be like, okay, when I meet an investor, what is it going to be like? What do I have to act like? Blah, blah, blah. And I would think they're probably thinking about what they're eating for dinner. Are they having spaghetti or chicken? Like, they're not thinking about me really at all, probably. And that's kind of the mindset that I go into with everything. And that helps me be so much more calm in a situation. I'm like, they're thinking about their kids. They're thinking about their life. They have a normal life just like everybody else. I shouldn't be thinking about what I look like or how I sound or whatever. You're just connecting with a person at the end of the day. It's not that intimidating when you think about it that way.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of like a really like different story that I haven't told before. Oh my God, I really don't think I have any. I think
It was a great story,
I say
though.
everything.
You told a great story because that video performed really well.
Yeah.
People like it. I'm sure people mention it to you when you go out in public. Oh, I love that video, right?
Right.
But it really was like off of chaos, right? Like I was shooting the B-roll, Olivia was shooting the photos, and you were like running around like your dad was like, everything's fine.
Yeah, yeah.
And you were like, and then you put the baby down and the baby finally fell asleep.
Yes.
And you're like, we have 30 seconds to do this. Let's do this right now. And you made it so fast. You made it off of like chaos and sweat, and it turned out really well. And that's a virtue because like a lot of people hold themselves back because they're worried about their left eyebrow, but like, or maybe I didn't get a haircut. It's like, hey, you got to make the content.
Exactly. Like just get out there.
You got to put it out there.
Even on the way. That's why I brought my dad, because I'm like, she will not drive in the car without screaming the entire time. So like, I need you to just like, and then you're, as a mom in your head, you're like, oh, what am I doing? Why am I bringing the baby to work? Like, every mom goes through that, I think. Honestly, that like just the crossover of childcare, work, being a mom, for any mom listening, like it's just so fucking hard. It
is.
It's so fucking hard. And real estate is marketed a lot to moms because it's a flexible schedule, but you're not on your own schedule. You're on your client's schedule. And again, the people who make the deals, they at the drop of a hat will go and meet somebody. So I just think everyone kind of having the understanding of like, I think honestly too, as a whole, people just need to give people a little bit of a break more. I think, especially with parents. It's not just moms. I read that like several years ago, maybe 30 years ago, they did a study of like how many dads had like changed diapers, and it was like 44% didn't know how to change a diaper. Now it's 3% doesn't know. So that's huge. Like that dads are so much more involved. I think that is so major for women, and we should be like celebrating that, I think, because there's been so much rhetoric about like the battle of the sexes of like, oh man, like if people can just give each other a little bit of a break when it comes to parenting and like the work life, especially that a lot of people are working from home now, instead of acting like we're all superheroes and like it doesn't affect us, I think it's maybe a little bit more effective to just be like, listen, this person's juggling these things, like let's give them a little bit of a break. I try to do that with the agents too. It's like I understand like what people are going through and like their schedules and stuff. So I think everybody just kind of giving each other a little bit of grace in those situations is helpful.
Yeah. It definitely helps me become a parent. Like last night I went to bed at like 3:00.
Yeah.
Just because we're taking care of things. Like we're making sure things look good, things are in order. And then I'm like, all right, I have to drive to Fort Lauderdale. So, we're in Palm Beach, I should leave by this time. And then like at like, halfway through the night, which with like this tiny hour of, few hours of sleeping, our son wakes up and he's just like crying. He's just like crying, and like he's not, nothing's really, helping him. And to be a parent and then to also operate in business is not easy. So I want to acknowledge you for doing it. I know it takes a lot of work, even your time today. coming out here and just, you know, sharing with people your insights and everything. It's been so valuable. So thank you so much for being here, Mari. Today.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you. And I love seeing you guys grow and crushing it, and how, you know, the way that we're talking about like having pride in what you're doing. Like, you guys really could be doing what everybody else is doing, but you're not. You're really going outside of the box and being innovative. And I think if you just keep doing that, there's no way that your brand won't grow. There's like, the sky's the limit also. I was
listening to something on YouTube yesterday, and it was like talking about how to build wealth, and the guy was saying how you have to, like, authenticity is like part of like is what gives you a competitive edge. Right? Because so we're in Palm Beach and Jupiter. Like, we shoot those houses. We've shot over $1 billion worth of real estate this year. Wow. Like, we crush it out there. But Boca and Del Rey, like, we want to shoot more real estate out here. We have the team to do it, and we can do it at the highest level. So I was like starting to, like, you know, approach it like, okay, let's get some more clients in Boca Del Rey. Like, you know, these people are already here. How can we crush it? And then I was kind of like had the reality check is like, hey, how we crush it is by doing like what we do differently. Exactly. Because no other companies are doing these, like, and same with you, right? Like other brokerages that are starting, like, think about the other brokerages that are starting in the last like 3 years. You can think of like 10.
Right.
No one's doing what you're doing. And that's your competitive edge. Yeah. So like, rather than doing what they're doing to be competitive, like, oh, I must, you know, hand out the flyers that they're handing out because I saw a flyer. It's like, no, let me make content. Let me do this. Let me do that. So
do what's worked.
Yeah. Do what works for you, because that's your competitive edge. And in the big picture, that makes you way more competitive than them, because you're you. And
I enjoy doing it. So that's really it would be hard to get me to stop making content. Yeah. You know, like, I really do enjoy it. So I'm grateful, you know.
You did a great job.
Thank you.
Good to see you today. Awesome.
I appreciate it. Yeah.